All right, it says meeting is now streaming live.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Great to see everyone for our ANF Subcommittee meeting of the Health Connector Board of Directors. And I am pleased to just thank and welcome our new chair, Nancy Turnbull, who will be chairing the Health Connector Board of Directors ANF Subcommittee meeting going forward. So Nancy, thank you for your willingness to serve in this capacity, and looking forward to today's meeting and having you lead us.
Great. Thanks, Audrey. Okay, so let's get started. We'll call the meeting to order of this group. Our first agenda item is approval of the minutes from our last meeting. So I'm going to call for approval and ask if there are any objections. Okay, hearing none. The minutes were approved by consent of the subcommittee. So that's great. I think maybe before we get into our other agenda items, let's do some introductions. And I'm wondering if we could have the members of the finance team from the connector who are here introduce themselves. And then Audrey, maybe you can introduce other connector staff, people from ANF, and I don't see anyone from EOHHS. And then I think we'd like to have our colleagues from KPMG introduce themselves too, just so as we're all talking, people know who's who. So, Carrie, you want to start?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Carrie Miller. I'm the CFO of the Health Connector, and I'm in the room with three others, so I'll turn it to Don.
Hi, Dom DeVito, Deputy CFO at the Health Connector.
Stacy Holloran, Director of Accounting at the Health Connector.
Sonia Dorairaj, I'm the Financial Analyst at the Health Connector.
And then Wing.
Wing Lee, Finance Manager. Edith.
Hi, I'm Edith Bushik-Alvayo, and I'm an actuary.
Great. And then other folks we've got on the line from the Health Connector, myself, Audrey Gasteyer, the Executive Director, and Nuri, I'll hand to you for an introduction.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nuri, Senior Agency Affairs Coordinator at the Health Connector, and I will be taking minutes today.
Good luck. And then Bella and Martha and Tori, do you want to just introduce yourselves too?
Sure. Hi, I'm Bella Gorman. I'm an health actuary and I'm on the connector board.
I'm Martha Kwasnick. I'm General Counsel for ANF and serve as Secretary Gorkowitz designee. And also joining me is the excellent Tori. I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Tori Gadatis. I'm a fiscal policy analyst at ANF and I work with the connector.
Great. And then I think that leaves Lisa and Brock from KPMG.
Lisa, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. Hi, I'm Lisa Pagliaro. I'm the lead senior manager on the Health Connector account.
Great. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Brock Romano. I'm the audit partner for the engagement.
And Brock, is it true that this will be your last audit with us? Did I hear that?
It is. I have an upcoming retirement this fall, and unfortunately wouldn't be around to kind of see the fiscal 24 audit to completion. Although it's not shortly. It's not too much after I retire that we actually issue. We issue early October. I think you're one of the first of the Commonwealth component units to actually get their report issued. But I'm going to miss you by a couple of weeks.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service, and we will try to give you a last audit meeting to remember.
Absolutely.
Okay. Did we miss anybody else on the group? Okay. So our next agenda item is an update on the financials for fiscal year 24 and 25. And Carrie, I assume you're going to take the lead on this?
With help of the group. So can everybody see a PowerPoint presentation? Whoops. All right, why? Sorry. What happened to that?
It's there and then
there's always, I can't, okay, sorry. I need to stop sharing because that little banner is like, I can't change the window. All right, let me.
There you go.
Oh,
Now all
you
you
can
have to
still
do
see
is
it.
put it in projection
Slideshow.
mode, and you should be good.
All right, you guys can see everything? Sorry, I'm not used to Zoom, so I apologize.
Well, Carrie, just now we're seeing slides, but we're also seeing a next slide. Can you do it on just the major?
Let's see. How do I do that? Does anybody know?
Carrie, try display settings.
Sorry. Are you still seeing the next slide?
Yeah, we are.
Kathy, what did you say I should do? I am so sorry. I'm not used to Zoom.
That's okay.
Try display settings.
Where's that?
Up top, like a taskbar.
Does anybody else see?
Yeah, make them.
I think Carrie might not be seeing what the rest of us are, so probably can't see that display setting.
Yeah, I'm seeing a different screen is the problem. I don't know how to just show.
Carrie, try exiting the full screen, the slideshow view. And then on the bottom right, there is a different slideshow option. So it's right next to the Zoom to the right.
Do you see what she's talking about?
I didn't hear it.
So the lower right corner has the Zoom function.
Yeah.
Yep. So to the left of that, there's a slideshow button. Yep.
That's it.
Still showing it.
Still showing it.
Yeah, I don't know.
What's that display settings?
Oh, that's.
There we go.
You did it.
Oh, it's a miracle. Okay.
Well done.
All right.
Okay.
Guys, thank you, Kathy. So sorry for the delay. Good afternoon. A special welcome to Nancy and Bella, and Nancy for chairing. It's fabulous to both have you both on the subcommittee. So the purpose of today's meeting is to review our updated fiscal year 24 financial projections, as well as share with you our fiscal year 25 maintenance recommendation, which was shared last month with staff at administration and finance prior to the governor's budget being released. So as you know, the Health Connector is primarily funded by the Commonwealth Care Trust Fund, or the CCTF. This fund is managed by administration and finance, and the CCTF funds 100% of our programmatic costs, so all of the subsidies associated with Connector Care, as well as about half of our operating or administrative costs. As I just said, the programmatic costs are primarily the state subsidies, but they also include other modest costs such as state mandated benefits and wellness subsidies for the Health Connector for Business program. With respect to FY24, we are projecting that we will need about $212 million from the CCTF, which is a little bit higher than the estimates that were shared with the subcommittee last June. This is primarily due to the Connector Care expansion pilot, which was passed by the legislature last summer. This is a 2-year pilot that expands eligibility from 300 to 500% of the federal poverty level. After you consider FFP or federal financial participation, the net cost to the Commonwealth is about $159 million. For FY25, we are estimating that we will need about $370 million gross from the CCTF. This reflects a full 12 months of the pilot that I just spoke about, because we only had 6 months of that in FY24, as well as some increased membership because of the redetermination period. So net of FFP, we're thinking that the cost of the Commonwealth for FY25 and that we reported to ANF was about $287 million. So as I mentioned earlier, the CCTF also funds about half of our operating or administrative cost. The rest is funded primarily by carrier fees. Our administrative budget includes costs for all of the vendors that perform all of the services on our behalf, such as enrollment and premium billing and contact center, as well as other costs that we incur for our rent, our personnel, outreach, IT, et cetera. Compared to what we shared with the full board in July of 2023, the administrative budget is currently favorable by about $1.2 million. For FY25 for the admin budget, I would highlight two different things. The first is that it reflects the end of those kind of one-time activities and initiatives that were reflected in our FY24 budget to support members and residents of the Commonwealth throughout the Medicaid redetermination process. So all of those one-time costs are no longer there. And then secondly, for FY25, and we'll talk about this a little later, we are also reflecting pretty conservative estimates for any additional or any potential, budget impacts that could result because of upcoming procurements that we need to do for contact center and technology services. So we will be closely monitoring this process, and as more information becomes available, we will update this budget accordingly and share it with this group. Before we delve into FY24 and I turn it over to Edith, I'll stop to see if there are any questions. I'm hearing none. Nancy, I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, no, I was just monitoring. I don't see any questions, so I think you can continue.
Great. We will proceed with FY24, and I will pass it over to Edith to talk about Connector Care.
Good afternoon, everyone. So there's still some uncertainty about the assumption used for the FY24 budget, especially on the number of people that will move from MassHealth to CCA. Please note that at the time these projections were produced, we had no information about February enrollment, and February is a very big month in terms of enrollment. Could be as big or even sometimes bigger than January. So in addition, the flexibilities granted by CMS to MassHealth to increase their renewal rate will expire in March. So CCA should see a higher rate of enrollment in QHBs after March. So the Connector Care expansion population is included in the exhibit on the next slide, but it's assumed that it's not eligible for federal financial participation reimbursement at this point, although this might change in the future. Calendar year 2024 continues to include premium smoothing approved by the Health Connector Board of Directors.
Edith, do you have any idea if we got FFP for the expansion, like roughly how much additional revenue that would be?
I don't know if somebody from ANF might give a little bit more details about what we're expecting, because I'm not sure even if we get something that it will be the same thing as what we get currently for the 0 to 300%.
Yeah, that's what I didn't know what the match would be.
Right, I don't know either.
I guess nobody knows.
I can speak to what I think we're expecting in less so in FY24, but pending CMS approval in FY25. I think we're hopeful we would be able to get FFP on spending for the expansion population up to 400%. Mm-hmm. And as of now, our assumption is that that would generate about $20 million.
$20 million.
Revenue. But that is tentative and I think pending a lot of other things, but that's our estimate at the moment.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Tori. Just kind of gives us an order of magnitude a little bit. So thank you.
Okay, so I think we can move to the next slide. So net federal financial participation, FY24 is estimated at $159.2 million, which is $28.6 million higher than the estimate presented at the ANF subcommittee meeting last June. During that June meeting, it was not known whether the Connector Care expansion pilot would be signed into law. Therefore, it was not included in projected costs, which explains the unfavorable variance. That unfavorable variance is partially offset by lower membership than expected, coming from the MassHealth redetermination process, as well as a reduction in CCTF draw for operating expenses. Any question on any of these two slides? If not, we can go to the projected enrollment for FY24, which reflects a 7.7% decrease compared to the numbers approved by the Board of Directors last July. The unfavorable variance is driven by lower membership than expected coming from the mass health redetermination process. Any questions related to the FY24 enrollment?
So Edith, is the lower enrollment all in the what I would now call traditional connector care?
It's in all population, but since we were expecting more people in connected care, then that's where most of the variance is. Yes.
But if we look within connector care, there's the traditional connector care up to 300 and now the 3 to 5.
Yeah, it's in both actually.
It's in both? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
If there's nothing else, I will pass it over to Wing. This is her first presentation to the board. And she's going to review the next 2 slides on the fiscal year 24 admin budget.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm pleased to present an update on our financial position compared to the previous FY24 approved budget, by the board in July. This slide is a high-level summary of the net position, and the details of expenses are on the next slide. There is a favorable change in the net position of $1.2 million from a non-GAAP perspective. The total revenue is down by $7.2 million. This is due to a reduction in carrier fee by $3.9 million, driven by lower membership. CCTF have broken down into $35 million for ongoing operations, which has no changes, and the decrease of $3.7 million for one-time vendor expenses to support redetermination activities. These decreases in revenue are partially offset by the $400,000 favorable change of other revenue. Non-GAAP expenditure have decreased by $8.4 million, resulting in the favorable net position of $1.2 million. Unless there are questions, we can go to the next slide to explore expenditures in more detail.
I don't see any questions, so.
Okay, next slide then, I guess. Oh, okay. The primary contributors to the decrease are $7.9 million from the contact center, enrollment and premium processing, $500,000 from navigators and outreach, $0.7 million from personnel attributed to the gap in backfilling positions. The increase in expenses, though, is for IT and consulting is linked to one-time expenditures for data analytic resources and a security assessment. The $100,000 for strategic plan investment is a placeholder for work related to the administration burden act. So are there any questions before we review FY25?
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about the variance in someone in the navigators outreach and education, like why that's lower than we had expected, given everything I know we've been doing?
Wing, would you like me to take that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nancy, we had a very, very conservative budget, as you know, for outreach and education and the navigators to support the members. We did have some contingency funds in that line item, which were not used. So this is not a result of us decreasing any sort of initiative. It was money that we don't anticipate will be needed at this point because the estimates were pretty high to begin with.
Okay, and the 700K or so variance in backfilling positions. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this is just a delay in backfilling positions. It's taken longer to fill vacancies. So that's what this is not indicative of us, cutting any sort of positions or anything like that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. And if there's no additional questions on 24, I will turn it back to Edith for FY25.
But first, let's congratulate Wing on a wonderful.
Thank you, Wing.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Wing.
So in terms of assumption for FY25, the two major area of uncertainty about new membership are cascading through FY25. So that's the number of people redetermined by MassHealth that will join the connector, and also the membership growth due to the connector care expansion pilot. So the more generous ACA advanced premium tax credit subsidies of the Inflation Reduction Act continue into 2025. It's also assumed that premium smoothing continues for 2025, and this additional level of subsidy is not applied to the connected care expansion population. So it's only for the 0 to 300%. FPL increase was assumed to be 3.3% for a family of one. This is consistent with the final numbers that were published in January after this budget was produced. That is lower than what we saw in the past 2 years, and this impacts enrollee contribution. So therefore, for calendar 2025, it was assumed that the enrollee contributions for the lowest cost civil plans will increase by 3.3%. In the past 2 years, these enrollee contribution increases were adjusted downward to protect people from the very high inflation, and no recoupment from these adjustments is included in the 2025 increases. We're also assuming that the CSR loaded rates will continue in 2025, and there's always other areas of uncertainty that remain. Any questions relating to those assumptions?
Edith, I have a question on the CSR load. Did you make an assumption that it might be lower than it has been in the past few years?
Well, yeah, so we're assuming basically it's in the rate increases, and there's a lot of assumption included in there.
Okay.
And, yeah. So, yeah.
It doesn't look like any other questions.
I'm on slide 11. Can you guys see slide 11?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay. So net of FY25 is estimated at 287.1 million, which is 127.9 million higher than FY24. And most of the difference is due to including the full 12 months of the connected care expansion population in FY25, as opposed to only 6 months for FY24. Membership increase is the second biggest contributor. And there is an expected reduction in state CSR reconciliation amount, as well as an increase in CCTF draw for operating expenses that are other important contributors. Any questions?
So how did you come up with your membership projection? Like, did you just use what we have for the latest count? And
yeah, so we look at it looks like a little bit like a triangle that we do but we look at how many peoples are coming after 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days of the MassHealth redetermination process.
Yes.
And we're kind of following or using that pattern for future projections. And also for MassHealth, we had basically 2 buckets, the protected population, which is going away, and the other population, which is the annual redetermination, which will continue in FY25.
Yeah. So there's still a big unknown with the 300 to 500 though, right? Like, how did you come up with an estimate for that population?
There is, and Well, I mean, so now we have, I think the people that came in January, so that gave kind of
an idea
of what we might get. And then we're kind of following, using that and maybe an assumption about people becoming more familiar with the program that might result in an uptake of membership for this population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems like a big unknown.
Yeah, it is actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Edith, on that, like we've seen sort of lower than expected membership as a result of mass health redetermination. So is that slower or like lower conversion? Is that taken into account projecting for FY25?
Yeah, I mean, the projections are based on the most recent actual numbers that we've seen and like the percentage of people that were transitioning from each batch, basically. So that accounts for that.
Okay.
But we're, like I said previously, we're assuming that those rate of conversion will increase a little bit in the future after March because Mass Health got some flexibilities that will expire at the end of March. So that should increase the conversion rate a little bit for the non-protected population because protected population is going away after this month. So, I mean, they will continue to come, but there's no more batches. They will have all been redetermined by the end of this month.
And can you just give us a sense like how sensitive this is to variances in terms of the CCTF draw? You know, like if you're...
It's very sensitive. Membership is a big component, definitely. That's
It's probably the biggest assumption, I would say. It drives the variance.
Right.
It is.
So that is something like, I guess, I think we probably want definitely the 300 to 500 because I feel like you do have some information and data to help you understand the enrollment for under 300 because of Mass Health but there's a big unknown between the 300 and 500.
That's correct. Yeah, we have much less data on this population, not to say almost like no data because whatever data we had on the DC only population, it is different now that they're a new program and they have different benefits with very low cost sharing, basically.
And when we're reporting, I'm assuming we're seeing just the 300 to 500. Can we up to 300, but also making those cuts, right?
I have the breakdown of the two populations. Yes. Yeah.
And Bella, does that suggest to you anything in addition you think it's important for us to be doing or the subcommittee to be looking at?
I would be very interested in looking at as the membership growth this year separated out by under 300 and 300 to 500 and then no subsidy or above 500.
Yeah, I thought that would be helpful to look at in all the membership slides as well, hence my question a little while ago. So maybe we can work with. Yeah. I think that'd be good for both the committee, but I think the full board to be paying attention to as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure if people, the degree of familiarity with the new benefit in terms of cost sharing, which is much lower than what this population has been used to.
Right. Right. And they've been paying full premium where they would now get premium subsidies.
Right. I mean, the DC population had some subsidies.
Yes.
So now it's a little bit bigger.
I
think the biggest benefit is that their cost sharing is much, much, much lower.
Yes.
Especially for silver and bronze.
Yeah.
Even gold. So if there is no more question on this one, we can move to
Leads us nicely into the next slide, Ida.
Okay. So FY25 projected enrollment. So it's projected to be 20.3% higher than the enrollment for FY24. And it's mostly due to the Mass Health redetermination process and also the Connected Care extension pilot. And like we mentioned earlier, I can, provide you the details if you want.
So Bella, but on this one, for example, would you like to see like the Connected Care bar split into two?
I think that would be really helpful.
I think it would be helpful too. Yep.
Yeah.
Sure, you can find another color.
Yeah.
Okay. So if there is no other question, then I'll turn it over to Carrie.
Great. Thanks, Edith.
Thank you, Edith. So let's quickly talk FY25 admin budget. This is a high-level summary of the 25 budget that we submitted to ANF for the maintenance process, and we'll talk expense details on the next slide. So compared to FY24, revenue is up by about 22 million, which is driven by an increase in the carrier fee revenue because of membership increases. As I mentioned in the overview slide, and we'll talk about it more on the next slide, we've adjusted our requested CCTF draw to support admin up to 50 million. Again, this is because we're not sure exactly what the outcome of the upcoming two procurements will be for contact center and technology vendor. So as we know more, we will update the budget accordingly, of course, and share that with this group. As I also mentioned, the one-time, redetermination activities initiatives will be ending in FY25. And where this leaves us here is essentially from a non-GAAP perspective, a net position of about a positive 4 million or so, with estimated reserves at about 50 million, which is consistent and aligned with advice that we have received from our audit friends over the years of having about 6 months worth of operating costs available to us in case of an emergency. If there are no questions on this slide, I will move to the next and we can talk expenses in more detail.
Great.
Hearing none. Again, so I'm sorry, I feel like a broken record here at some points. But the major expense increase that we're seeing here is in the first line item at the top, contact center enrollment and premium billing. Again, not sure what the outcome of the procurements are going to be and if we will be required to transition to a new or two new vendors. But we have budgeted extremely conservatively here. We have assumed 10 million for vendor implementation. We have also assumed 8 million in operating costs for the new vendor in a situation where we have to run multiple vendors concurrently. Again, lots of uncertainty here, and we will adjust the budget as we know more. So that is the biggest increase there is, of course, related to that.
And Carrie, can you just say just a little bit about like where those numbers came from? Does that reflect experience in the past?
Yes.
Does that reflect experience with what we've seen in other agencies? Or
yes, it reflects our own experience given over the last few years that we've had to transition to more than one vendor. Yeah. So based on kind of what we've seen, that's why we assumed the 10 million for implementation. 8 million, again, that's based off of kind of what we're paying now. So we've extrapolated, and we're hoping that those costs are not going to be anywhere near that. But again, we just don't know at this point. And so we have included those conservative estimates here.
Yep.
Do the expenses tie to membership at all? So the greater the
Yes.
membership, the higher the expenses?
That's right. So another portion of the increase is because for our vendors, for the most part, they are paid on a per member per month basis. Except our contact center vendor also has fixed fees associated with that, but for the most part, a lot of this is per member per month.
So to the extent we don't hit the membership projections, they're lower.
That's right.
Those expenses will come down one for one.
That's right. Maybe not one for one, because again, we've got some fixed costs.
Fixed costs, sure.
Yeah. But yes, like Softheon is all PMPM based. Accenture is mostly, but again, there are some fixed costs there. And then just a couple of other things to note. The Hicks operations and maintenance costs, we share those costs with Mass Health. Those are allocated based on membership. This is the best estimate that we have from our colleagues at this point, so we'll continue to monitor that. The decrease in the navigators outreach and education is simply a function of those one-time initiatives that are ending in FY25 as the redetermination period ends.
And Carrie, does that 6.7 million, does that take us back to what we were at in the most comparable previous year?
That's a great question, Nancy. It does. And I think actually that we are a little bit higher than what we have historically budgeted here. And I think most of that is due to some additional support for our navigators. I can certainly take that back and check and confirm that that's the right answer.
Yeah, I'd love to know that. I think, it makes sense that significant decline, but I think we also want to be sure that it's robustly enough funded.
Agreed.
Yeah, thanks.
And then, of course, thank you. And then the personnel and fringe, this is primarily a function of, for those positions that we have hired in FY24 or whatever, we're assuming a full 12 months of those people, where we're not assuming, we are not assuming in this budget any new positions for fiscal year 25. This is a conservative number again. We haven't really budgeted for vacancies necessarily, and it does reflect a COLA, which I believe Audrey will be discussing as part of the next agenda item. The only other thing I would note here is that the strategic plan investments, the 500K is to support and further some of those findings from the administrative burdens audit. And I'll stop there and see if anybody has any additional questions.
So, Carrie, just to make sure I understand, so the variance we saw earlier where we hadn't filled positions as quickly as we hoped.
Right.
So this shows all of those now being filled and carried
That's right.
forward but it doesn't reflect, as you just said, increases in staff. It's just being fully staffed up now.
That's
and
right.
then the COLA increase on top of that. Okay.
That's right. That's right. Any other questions? Okay. I will not take any more of your time because our auditors are here and they have a quick presentation for you and there'll be time for discussion. But our fiscal year 24 audit was clean. This is the 6th one in a row. So big thanks to Dom and Stacy here and their team. Again, I won't spend time here. This is the last slide and the subcommittee will have an opportunity to speak with Brock and Lisa.
And I think we look forward to that, but also, as we'll talk about, we don't get a clean audit unless you and your team are doing a great job, Carrie.
Thank you, Nancy. You got a great team of folks here.
Okay, so
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. So I think before we get to the audit, though, we're going to do the personnel update. Is that right?
Yes, that is next.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to review certain information, including some salaries, information. We all get information on our various leave policies, and then we're going to, Audrey, you're going to present the COLA recommendation?
Yes, I will do that.
And I think that some of us staff need to leave the room.
Yeah.
And then go ahead. Sorry, Audrey.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think folks leave besides me and Nori right now. And then Carrie, if you want to come back on with me, audit presentation,
yes.
Maybe, and Nancy, I know I'll drop off partway through the personnel thing. So maybe if Nancy or Kathy or someone can just ping me and Carrie so we know when to come back on.
Great.
Just in terms of logistics.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Kathy's going to do that for us. Thank you. Edith, I'll text you when we're ready for you if you want to come back for the audit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Just let folks filter out. Okay, great. So for the personnel item, folks should have received a memo that includes some core information that we always report out to the ANF subcommittee this time of year. It's inclusive of a list of executive staff salaries, inclusive of my own, as well as some vacation and sick time leave policy, just for your reference. So Nancy will defer to you on anything with direction you may want to go with respect to executive team salaries. I did want to just make a note that included here is a recommendation around a staff COLA. So as you can see, the management recommendation here that I'm putting forward is a 3.5% COLA. That is fairly close to where CPIU inflation came in for 2023, which was about 3.35%. So the logic here was just to sort of round up to the nearest half percentage point of 3.5. Last year, we came in with a COLA adjustment that was under what the actual inflation had been for that year. So my thinking was just to kind of tee that up a tiny bit. You'll see here that there's a recommendation of capping the COLA in terms of applicable salary that it's laid to of $150,000. And the thinking here, and certainly welcome input, is just to ensure that the COLA doesn't manifest in a way that's particularly regressive to our lower paid staff vis-a-vis our higher paid staff, including executive team. So that's the idea here, is really to have kind of a balanced approach that reflects inflation as is, more or less, but not excessively increasing the higher end of the spectrum in terms of salaries within the connector at the executive level and those upper ends. So welcome any thoughts, but put this forward for consideration by the subcommittee.
Audrey, have we in the past done any capping like this before? Could you just give us a little bit of the history, and also just so we can get a sense of it, if we were to cap, is this all the staff who would be affected, or are there other staff who aren't senior staff?
Yeah, so we've done capping maybe once or twice in the last couple of years, for the same reason, which was just to kind of ensure that we didn't see sort of excessive kind of acceleration of the higher level staff salaries within the connector. So last year, if I'm recalling correctly, we had a COLA that was capped, I believe it was for income up to $100,000. So this is going higher, reflective of the fact that we do have a fair amount of staff that are between 100 and 150, and not wanting them to get too far left behind. We do have other staff that are between what you see here, like above 150. Now, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but there are some staff that are even in this mix here as well.
Mm-hmm. And can you give us any sense what the staff reaction's been in the past to capping?
I haven't personally heard feedback on the capping itself. Last year, our COLA was, higher than it had been in some time because inflation was, of course, at historically high levels. And I think folks were really appreciative of that. So I didn't hear too much feedback in the way of the cap in particular, I think because it affects a minority of the staff and those at the higher income levels. I don't know that that's done in other agencies, for example, but we're somewhat unique in that we're a quasi, and so our salary scale's a bit at variance with some of our peer agencies that are not quasis.
And was there an overall state COLA? I know a lot of state workers are in union contracts, I guess, so that's subject to collective bargaining, but
it is. Yeah, it's distinct. And I could be wrong, and I can check this, but my belief, and if ANF, if anyone from ANF can correct me, I believe there was a 4% adjustment that was manifesting in other agencies recently. I'm not sure that that was COLA specific, but I don't know if anybody from ANF has better information than me on that one.
Yeah, Martha or Tori, do you know? You have any sense?
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, that's okay.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. Okay. Any questions, Bella? You have anything you want to know before we ask Audrey to leave for a bit?
I guess I guess understanding what the rest of the state is doing, or even the other quasi agencies like HPC, or so it'd be nice to just know, I guess, that information.
I can collect some information from some other, from HPC. Or last year we did put some feelers out, and it was different by agency, as you might imagine. But just kind of knowing we're in the ballpark.
Yeah.
I think those do tend to pin it mostly to what that CPI kind of index is. So I would imagine it's pretty close to this, but I can definitely put some feelers out and see what we learn.
And then Audrey, could you just explain? So this comes before our subcommittee.
Yes.
And then does it go to the full board, or
no, it doesn't.
We're it.
You are it.
Okay.
You are. So yeah, so this usually gets brought to and I haven't done this before myself, but it usually comes to the subcommittee, and then as long as the subcommittee is comfortable, we proceed.
Yeah. Okay. So Audrey, maybe why don't you just Bella, unless you have anything else, maybe. I think it's just good form, Audrey, if you just leave for a bit.
That sounds great. I will take my exit. Thank you all. And I think Kathy will grab me and Carrie when it's time to come back on for the audit piece.
Will do.
Okay, thank you.
So Bella and Martha, do you have any? I mean, the COLA increase to me seems very, I mean, I think it'd be nice to know, but since it's our decision, seems consistent. I get the reason for the capping, and I'm not opposed to it. As a general principle, I don't love that, but if this is a recommendation. But Martha, do you have any thoughts on that, given everything else you see?
No, I don't have an issue with it per se. I'm generally comfortable with it. I think the connector staff does a really great job, and they absolutely deserve a COLA adjustment. So I'm inclined to be deferential to their own recommendation personally. But I don't know if Bella or Tori, if you have any thoughts on that as well.
No, I like this is all new to me. So in terms of what's the right increase, and I agree, I think it's very reasonable what's being recommended. So even the cap is it's super reasonable, and I guess conscientious of there's some thought put into even the cap. So yeah, I don't have any issues with it.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with it either. I think it's sensitive to the current climate. I think maybe we could chat with Audrey, and if we're still on the subcommittee next year, maybe we could talk a little further in advance about different approaches and what other agencies are doing. But it seems a reasonable proposal to me. So you're comfortable with it, Bella? Martha, you're comfortable with it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Well, then I think we have approved it. So, okay. Kathy, do you want to?
Can I invite them back?
You may invite them back.
Give me 1 second. Okay, they just got the word. Give it a sec.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Hello again.
Hey, Audrey. So we approved the staff recommendation on personnel, so thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And so then our last agenda item is we're going to get a report on the fiscal year 24 audit that Lisa and Brock are going to lead. And the way we're going to run this, the staff is going to stay for the first part while we hear about the audit and the findings so that they can both hear it, but also be available for questions. Then we're going to ask all of you to go so the subcommittee can ask our KMPG colleagues anything we want to ask them, KPMG. So without this staff present, so that's typical process. So Lisa, Brock, who's going to lead this part of the conversation?
Thank you, Nancy. I think I'll open it up. Lisa will lead us through some of the details, but just wanted to maybe level set and thank you for the opportunity to meet with the subcommittee today. So today we can kind of do two things. One, we can recap the financial statements that we issued in October. So those, what I would call the fiscal year 23 financial statements. But we could also talk a little bit about the planning for the fiscal year 24 audit that is always in a continuous state of involvement and planning. I'll just have some general remarks, looking backwards at the financial statements that we just issued. So our scope of the audit includes the financial statements. We issued that report back in October. It had an unmodified or clean opinion, something I think, Nancy, you referred to being a testament to the quality of management. I think the pledge or commitment that KPMG gives to its clients is if we were ever to have a situation that would be trending towards an unmodified or qualified opinion, we would have some conversations, long before that, through the chain of command of management, obviously, but that's the kind of audit results you should expect. And because we do the audit in accordance with government auditing standards, we also issue what we call a byproduct report, and that's a report on internal controls over financial reporting. And I tried to stress the word report, but maybe I didn't stress it enough. It's not an opinion. So unlike a public company that will actually get an opinion on their internal controls under government auditing standards, the level of precision is much less. So all we do is give a report on internal controls. And that report indicated that there were no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies in internal controls. So again, something that you should kind of expect from management. I will say in the past, we've also performed services over federal awards. The last time we did that was in fiscal year 22. Intermittently, you get federal grants that support some of your activities. And if in the future you get that type of support from the federal government, if it's in excess of $750,000, our services would expand to cover that. But that was not the case in fiscal year 23. And we don't anticipate it being the case for fiscal year 24, but that's something we would want monitor with management. So I will pause. I'll ask Lisa maybe to walk through what we call our required communications. I've probably stolen some of her thunder in those opening remarks, but I do think it's helpful for us to formally go through and talk about the professional responsibilities that we all share.
Okay, thanks, Brock. Just want to make sure everyone can see the full screen, right? It's a little trickier on Zoom versus Teams when you're used to one. So I think some of the highlights have already been hit. So I'll bring us right to the required communications. I guess the first couple slides are really just talking about our KPMG experience and some of the changes we've been having at our firm, really around expanding the use of our technologies, which there actually are quite a few of these that we do end up utilizing on the Health Connector team, especially because a lot of the data that we're getting is just very large sets of data. So we have some newer tools that we can utilize to kind of get through that in a more manageable fashion. So going to the required communications. So the main and most important one, which has already been said, is on the unmodified opinion. The one thing I'll say here, this is one of the only spots where you want to see a lot of the word no. So we have a lot of no matters to report listed here, and that's including no uncorrected or corrected audit misstatements that require reporting to you, no omissions of presentation matters or disclosures, no significant non-GAAP policies. There were no significant issues encountered during our audit, no significant findings or disagreements. I think that this one, I mean, this is really usually what we do like to see. No matters to report overall, no significant matters or subsequent events, no going concern issues either. And this brings us to the last formal section. Throughout our audit, there were no actual or suspected fraud identified, whether with management or employees, and we do perform a number of procedures specifically around the significant risk of management override of control, including review of journal entries and different procedures we incorporate throughout the audit. We do also, as of today, reaffirm our independence with KPMG from the Health Connector, which allows us to issue our opinion. On the next page, we do have standard inquiries that we like to include, and we won't necessarily go through all of these, but I think it serves as a really good memory jogger if there's anything that were to come up, whether now or throughout the year, that falls under any of these categories. This is something that Brock or I, and then as we move forward, the new partner on the engagement of myself, something that you could be in contact with us about or discuss during our meetings. So that does bring us to the end. I know it was a little bit brief. There were a couple mentions of some of the things we were going to cover before. So if there's anything anyone would like additional information on, just let us know.
Mark and Lisa, for how many years have you all been the auditors?
Since inception.
Since inception.
Not Lisa or I, but KPMG, I believe, was appointed as your initial auditors upon formation of the first in the country connector. We have gone through 2 active procurements during my tenure. We were happy to be reappointed in both of those procurements. I can't speak to how often you've gone out to bid in the past, but in my tenure, it's been pretty much every 3 years or so.
And does KPMG audit any other state marketplaces? I don't know if any are formed in such a way that they'd have their own audit. I don't know, but
that's an interesting question. I believe we have been involved as a firm with some other state connector authorities, although I don't know how many states actually have independent connector authority the way the Commonwealth does. What's a little interesting, Nancy, is that outside of New England, most states' audit services are done by the state auditor or the equivalent thereof. So the population is small in terms of states that engage outside auditors, and then even smaller when you think of states that would have their own independent exchange. I want to say we were involved with California at one point in time, but my memory's fading at this point.
Yeah. So, Bella, Audrey, Carrie, anyone on the staff, anything you want to ask our
No, I would just
DMG
confirm,
colleagues? Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Just confirm it's about every 3 to 4 years we do the procurement, and we'll have to do a procurement after the FY24 audit.
Yeah.
So we have 1 more year under this contract.
Okay. Good. Anything else? Oh, go ahead.
We're happy to leave whenever you tell us to leave.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if anybody had any other questions they want to ask in the public portion. If not, then be happy to leave.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, you too. So Nuri and Kathy, you're going to stay as the minute taker and
the Zoom runner.
Okay, and the Zoom runner. Thank you, Kathy. So, any questions for Brock and Lisa? I mean, I have the standard questions that I feel like, did you have adequate time? Did you have access to all the information? Did everyone cooperate? Do you think people were candid and forthcoming?
Yes, to all the above.
Yes, to all the above. Bella, did you want to ask anything? I have a few other things.
I guess in the 10 years that you've been doing this, has there ever been an issue?
I came onto this engagement as the lead partner, I believe, in 2018, give or take. And so I had the benefit of the benefactor of some of those rough initial years. I wasn't here for them, but I do recall that some of the earlier years, there was some challenges with reconciling information from your third-party contractors. I believe there at one point in time was at least a significant deficiency, if not a material weakness, over internal controls as it relates to some of those relationships. During my tenure, I witnessed you folks deal with replacing vendors and having to, bring on new vendors. By that time, management, I think, had, enough planning that we didn't notice those were disruptions by a vendor, not disruptions by your internal control. So, and I think that's fairly common with a newly formed organization where the early years are, you're working out the kinks. I've been the benefactor of those kinks worked out during my tenure.
Do we have enough staff in the financial area, and we have the right mix of expertise from what you all have seen?
And that's an excellent question too. So I think you do have enough staff. I do think you have the right capacity and horsepower. I do kind of wonder for many of my clients about transition plans, right? Especially for some of your most tenured employees, right? And how you manage and migrate that. It's never easy with us. You have a relatively small staff to begin with, so it's not like you've got natural replacements within the organization just on the size of the organization. But in terms of what the connector does, it's always been a very small staff. It's still what I would consider to be a small staff, even though you've grown quite a bit over the last 5 or 10 years. A lot of your services are outsourced, so it's managing third parties and reconciling and reviewing controls and making sure they have the proper controls. So you can do that with a smaller staff than if you were doing that internally. So I do think the compliment is fair. I have not had discussions with Carrie or others about whether staff should be expanded or not expanded. It's just, what we see is the ability to execute the audit, and management certainly has the ability to execute the audit and has had the ability to oversee their vendors.
Do you look at our internal audit plan? Do we have one?
I don't look at. I don't know if I don't know if we have what I would call an internal audit.
Yeah.
Function. You may, right? We, in the classic sense, where there's segregated employees looking at controls and producing reports on their projects.
Are we just not big enough to have such a function, or it's not typical government function? Or
well, you've hit a nerve with me, and I'll try to do this in a truncated fashion, but I think every organization would benefit from an internal audit function. And if the organization isn't properly scaled and sized, then you can always outsource it. The good news is you can't outsource it to us, so I'm not shilling for work. Yeah. Independence prevents us from doing a lot of that work. I will tell you, in my experience with 35 plus years of state and municipal government, I have not seen a lot of organizations do internal audit correctly. They start off conceptually correct, but they become an arm of management over time, as opposed to an independent function that you would see in a private company or an SEC company. So having said that, I still believe it's a worthwhile activity. It allows both the board and management to drill into areas at a greater depth than we would in terms of the audit. So I'm a huge fan of internal audit. I just can't point you to a model organization that I've seen for your size. I would suspect you would outsource it on a project by project basis if that was something the board was interested in doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the internal audit function too, from other boards I've been on. So, from your perspective, any major issues that going forward this subcommittee should focus on, or that you think the board should try to be on top of? Anything else we should know about or pay attention to?
Yeah, and I mean, I'll maybe pause and invite Lisa. I have a tendency to, to take up all the oxygen here. Maybe Lisa, given you're going to have an ongoing relationship, is there anything that comes to mind, that maybe the board might be interested in?
I think just thinking generally, nothing. I don't think there's anything like that's coming to mind as a concern specific to the agency, but in general, I know cybersecurity is really I think that's the biggest thing that impacts everybody, and that feels like it gets the most attention because that's usually what will hit the news. That's I think that maybe we can actually, Brock, we can probably send one of the on top of the audit committee agenda type brochures KPMG has. I feel like that's probably the top of it at the moment, just in general cybersecurity.
And so the issue there is it's a big risk, and everyone should be doing as much as they can to be sure they're as secure as possible.
It does seem, and I feel like I've heard it said a lot, and I've said it. It feels more of not an if, but a when, and everyone seems to be impacted by it by different levels, whether it's like a phishing attempt in an email or something that's broader, like a ransomware attack or something. But I know I'm sure Brock has seen it more than I have, but it seems to come up at all different types of clients and different entities.
Martha, does the state as a whole have an approach to cybersecurity? Is this something individual agencies are dealing with, or?
We have an entire secretariat. In fact,
you do? What's it called?
EOTS, Executive Office of of Technology, and I can't remember the other T, security. It basically oversees all of our IT systems. And as part of that, they also perform a lot of trainings and review, and also help with ransomware. They actually also have a pretty close connection with municipalities as well, and provide technical assistance on cybersecurity issues for cybersecurity as well. And also, as I'm sure Tori and Neri can attest to, we have employees have to undergo annual cybersecurity training, and they get shut out of their computers if they don't do it within the timeline required. So there is a lot that the administration is doing on cybersecurity.
Good to hear. So Bella, anything else any other questions? So Lisa Brock, anything else we should have asked you but we didn't?
That's another one, excellent question. From my sense, with an organization like the Connector, where you're closely associated with, EOHS, and you have the overhang of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for guidance, finances, leveraging their programs as it fits the Connector. You get a lot of coverage just by being part of a larger organization. But I would potentially suggest that maybe you look inward in your own governance. What I see most of my clients doing, especially through either their ANF subcommittee or their audit committee, is really turning their attention to risk and almost having a risk committee who would challenge management to identify and categorize the risks that face this organization. And I suspect that many of those risks probably overlap with something the Commonwealth is doing, or potentially what Health and Human Services is doing, and then kind of having an action plan to address those risks. Now, you would have to tailor that to your organization, given your size and scope. But as I, look backwards on, what I've heard about the Connector before I came on, and what I saw at the Connector while I was here, and part of the remarks that I heard from management is you're going to undergo, you're in some large active procurements, right? So there's a risk. There's vendor risk management, there's technology risk management in there. There's all kinds of risks embedded in it. And if those risks are being addressed by one of the parties in your larger organization, great. If they're not, sometimes risk can kind of slip through the cracks when you've got, a lot of those parties working together. And so maybe selfishly, if the Connector kind of looked inward and kind of thought about, a risk profile, maybe as a governance item, that would be, I would maybe suggest for something that this committee and or the larger board to think about, as you move forward in time.
Good. I think that's always a good focus for the board, for sure. So,
and cybersecurity would be high up on that.
Yeah. Well, good. I think those are both really good suggestions, so we appreciate them very much. So, any other questions, comments from anybody else? So we thank you for your good work. Again, Brock, we're very grateful for your service to the Connector.
Thank you for your business. Thank you very much.
So, I suspect, I guess we don't have to have any votes, I guess. So I think we can just adjourn the meeting if there's nothing else. So Nuri, do you have what you need for your minutes?
I do, thank you.
Okay, good. Well, just be sure we ended the meeting in an appropriate fashion in the minutes. So, okay. All right, good to see everybody. Lisa, thank you.
Thank
Martha,
you.
Bella, Tori, good to see everybody.
Thank you. Good
See
to
you, Kathy.
everyone.
Okay.
See you Thursday.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.